You got,
you go.
okay, you got me this time. Now that means I've got a whole year to get back at you. So.
We do have quorum. We are waiting for Darrell, but that was the only other individual that we were waiting for.
Okay. So in the essence of time to call, I guess we'll start. I want to welcome everyone to the 2022 Day 1 CAB retreat. I just want to start by going over some Zoom etiquette, basic housekeeping. We want to ensure that all of our microphones are muted. If you have a question, obviously you can raise your hand. I believe it's under the reactions tab down below. I just want to ensure that everyone just has a kickback and fun day. This is a retreat, right? So let's get into it. Let's gain some great insight on CAB and find out exactly where we're headed. So we'll start by doing a roll call of members, please, Nicole.
Ozzy,
Present.
Crawford,
Present.
Dale,
Present.
Darrell, we're still waiting for Jonte,
Present.
Lila,
Present.
Mark.
Present.
I know Nakenya will not be able to join us today. Nicole.
Present.
And Dr. Cole will show up a little bit later, around 1:45, he said. So we have quorum.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anyone have any announcements? I can't see all the screens here, so feel free just to chime in. Okay. Any public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on this agenda? Okay, so at this time, we'll take the time to read over attachment 1, page 4 through 7, and gain an approval for the record of actions for January 13th, 2022. All right, I'm hearing none. Thank you, Nicole, for the scroll along there. So if we can get one of our members to approve the January 13th, 2021 CAB meeting minutes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the January 13th CAB meeting.
I second that motion.
I have a motion raised by Ozzy to approve the minutes for January 13th, 2001. I have a second from Nicole Green. Nicole, can I have a roll call?
We want to open up for public comment. Did you already do that?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. Any public comment?
Okay. I'll proceed with roll call vote. Ozzy,
Aye.
Crawford,
Yes,
Dale,
Aye.
Dante,
Aye.
Lila,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Nicole.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nicole.
Did you want me to stop sharing my screen now, Patrice, and bring up the PowerPoint?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Nicole. So this is day one of our annual retreat. One of the main purposes here is just to really gather some essential information. We'll obviously go over, the prehistoric outcomes in which CAB has participated in and where we're at now, and to just gain, CAB cohesion, to get us all here, have us all comfortable and understand exactly where we're headed this year. I really commend everyone, for coming today. And I just wanted to give a little background history as far as my participation with CAB. It just seemed like, like a fire hydrant, and I'm like a teacup, and information is coming from everywhere, and I'm trying to participate and, and be on board. So for all newcomers, I just want to say, give it time. It will definitely come. Put in the work. Obviously, research is always needed to assist when we're given, our recommendations, not to just our CBOs, but also to the CCP. And, and just stay dedicated. If there's something you don't know, ask. We got, a bomb squad over at ORJ that definitely, provides very valuable feedback. And we have individuals that have, dedicated countless hours to this board to really give information on exactly where we will be headed this year. Want to remind everyone, obviously, of day 2 tomorrow. We have our second retreat. I believe it starts at 9 a.m. And looking forward to today, to just us all having a great time, and looking forward also to tomorrow. Crawford, do you have anything?
no,
You want to give a little background as far as your last year with CAB and the experiences, things that you gained, where you're at now?
well, I thought it was quite an experience, coming from, what is it, a sector not involved with any of these activities. I'm getting a good understanding for how the governmental sector operates. They work at a different pace maybe than many of us are accustomed to, because of checks and double checks and counter checks, which I think, by the way, reflecting back, those are good. And I just think it's a tremendous opportunity to get your feet wet on issues that maybe you haven't been exposed to in the past. And that's been my situation. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Crawford. I also agree. And I just want to put out, although I'm obviously chair, Crawford's the vice chair, Nicole Green is the secretary. participants, all board members' contributions to the board is what obviously makes us whole. It's not just one person, it's all of our thoughts, all of our ideas, all of our input that leads to the recommendations for the CCP, and also, advocating for our pillars, what we believe in. So at any time, there's no dumb question, feel free just to open up and obviously let us know if you have any thoughts surrounding anything that's going on. So I just want to break into the agenda and overview of the process, the retreat purpose. Once again, it's just for us to, gain CAB cohesion, for us to get on board, really understand subcommittees, what exactly goes on there, obviously to orient it, the new members of CAB, and to review the history of AB 109 and CAB for what we have done prehistorically. And Nicole sent us out some great literature. And some of just my takeaways from my notes was just to build upon past years and where we're at now. And just to mention a few, it's just, where we're at is ensuring all AB 109 clients have appropriate housing upon release and increased access to permanent housing. Employment obviously remains a top priority for AB 109 clients that can be addressed by increased funding for integrated employment services and changes to the county's hiring policy and practice. I will continue advocating for funding to support the Reentry Success Center, recognizing trauma-informed policies and practice into all strategies and interventions with our CBOs. And which brings us up to date with our CAB pillars, as we have marked down. Our county residents and representatives of the community, we want a fair and equal justice system in Contra Costa County specifically. Our approach to policy continues to rest on our 4 pillars. We want to invest in what works. We believe that true justice requires social justice. We believe that incarceration should serve as the last resort. We believe that safety for all depends on justice for all. Tying that into one of the factors that remain vitally important is our policy and budget board that continues to oversee increases that's needed for money to flow in a direction for areas that need additional support for mental health, for substance use, for family reunification, for individuals that have primarily been affected by incarceration, and including those also that have just been justice impacted. I want to move on to just clarifying that the priorities for forming subcommittees is essential. We have obviously one more day before we take votes. So I'm hoping that individuals was able to dig into the packet that Nicole P. sent us, just to understand clearly what all subcommittees focus on. So tomorrow when we gather, all of our board members could, sort of just go into the subcommittee of their choosing. Is there any questions about the overall purpose or process? All right. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole Green. She's going to welcome us with an icebreaker.
Hello, everybody. I'm here to wake you guys up because it's 1:14 right after lunch, and I'm pretty sure we're all full. So how are you doing for day 1? I can tell you the retreat is a lot of fun. So sit back and enjoy. A lot of information will be coming your way, but I guarantee you it's really awesome to be here. So I have a cool little icebreaker for us all, and I'm going to definitely start off. It's for so give a little bit of instruction for our current CAB members. I would love for you to participate with me, and for any public responses, if you can please include those responses in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. So again, I'm Nicole Green, as Jonte mentioned. I am the secretary for CAB. And I'll start off. So as you take your turn, introduce who you are and let us know what your favorite activity as a youth is and if you still do it. So if you don't know me, I'm a big goofball. So one of my favorite activities that I wish I could still do was rollerblade. I was a tomboy, bikes, rollerblades, hopping off of walls, and I can't do that anymore. So I play it safe now, but that was something that I did as a youth that I really wish that I could still do again, but I get really fearful when I put one skate on my foot. So anybody else want to raise their hand and share what was one of your favorite activities as a youth, and do you still enjoy it?
I'll step in. This is Crawford Carpenter, and I'll be your wing person here.
Thank you.
And you know what? I'm amazed you said what you said, because my favorite sport, believe it or not, growing up, I was a sports fan, number one, and an active sports participant. And for those of you here in California, my brother and I used to be speed skaters. And we participated at a very, very high level back in the Midwest. And it was outstanding. So I always used to say to my dad, geez, I love sports. We love this. And he used to say, well, you know what? Cool your jets there, young man. He said, it's all right to be involved and to love sports. But he said, I want one other thing to go along with that. He said, brain activity. And his whole point when my brother and I were growing up was brain and brawn. He said, I love the brawn, but he said, I want you to bring a little brain power with you. So that was kind of my sport. That was our passion. And just to share one other thing, I think my brother really got the message because he got his PhD in clinical psychology. So that's it.
That's cool. See, we can see if I wasn't scared anymore, we could rollerblade together, Crawford. But I don't know if
right.
I.
Hey, that's close enough to ice
You
skating.
may have to hold my hand when I go down the hill, but
Okay.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share? Oh,
Well,
Nyla,
I could jump in. Can you guys hear me?
yeah.
Okay. Well, Nicole and Crawford, I can't top that because I was not that good on roller skates. And back in the day, we did have a roller rink, but I was observant. But you know what I did love to do? I love to dance. And not a lot of people knew that I could dance because I was a very introverted child and we danced at home. But as I was approaching graduation in high school, there was a talent show coming up. And I knew I could dance, I could get down, okay? So I was thin as a rail and very, very nerdy, but I donned my white mini skirt and my white go-go boots and I performed and I amazed myself. And surprisingly, that summer, our newspaper, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, was having a big dance contest for Cuyahoga County. So I had a partner, but at that particular time, my original partner got drafted. So the day of the competition, I donned that same white mini dress and those white go-go boots, and I went to the event anyway. And I watched everyone dance and the competition, and it was almost over. Then the announcer said, is there anyone else here that would like to compete and don't have a partner? So of course, I didn't have the partner, but I took to the floor and found a partner and won the competition. And from there, I went to dance on a local radio station. I was also choreographed by Jeff Kutash, who eventually did a lot of choreography in Las Vegas. And yes, I can still drop it like it's hot.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I did a little dance too in high school. I got to travel a lot to like New York and San Francisco. I love dancing. So that's I'm not at your level yet. I can still drop it too, but Lila.
All these things that folks are sharing is making me want to do that instead of a Zoom meeting. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. Okay, so I'm Lila Blanchard, and this is my third year on the CAB board, and it's really fun to be here. Thank you, yeah, for setting us all up, John Tay and company. There's a cake in this picture here, and so it's hard to not think of my love of sweets, but I would often combine sweets with running. So I was a short distance, long distance runner, and sometimes after track meets, we would get Entenmann's, Danishes, and just, you know, gobble them up. And I absolutely still love eating sweets. The running is a little bit harder. You're not going to see me just run 15 miles. I don't have that much mileage left in my knees, but I did go running, you know, probably like a little over a mile ago, a mile not too long ago. So, you know, we do what we can with our bodies.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, as we get older, I don't think we can run anymore. I'm trying it. I can probably halfway jog, but I think John Tay, I've seen your hand up.
Yes, I did have my hand up. Thank you, Nicole. Just to piggyback on Ozzy's, I definitely, like to get out on the dance floor and get my groove on as a youth. I used to definitely try to follow the footwork of, Usher and a few other guys. But, at this age, like Ozzy said, I make it, get down low, but it's just a little bit harder getting back up. So I try to take it easy and stick to my vitamins and my green tea. So, but I definitely enjoyed getting out on the dance floor in my youth as well as a hobby. So.
Okay, checking some of the comments here. Any other members want to share? Dale, Mark, anyone? Dale?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I enjoyed sports, football, basketball, and baseball all through my younger years and through high school. But right now, and for the last several years, I've been an observer, not a participant, because of physical conditions. I can't participate anymore, but I sure love to watch them.
Awesome, thank you. Mark, does anyone else want to share? Mark, or who else am I missing? You want to share one of your favorite activities as a youth?
There's someone else with their hand up.
I will be reading public comments in a second right now from the comment section. If it's a public comment piece, please type it in the chat. I'll be reading those in a moment. And then I'm reading for the CAB members.
Okay, well, Mark, I'm up in Oakley. I'm a new member of CAB. I sit on the Outreach and Community Engagement Subcommittee. Well, I grew up in Oakland, but one of my favorite things was I wanted to be a naturalist. So even starting at 5-year-old, I would go out and collect the insects in the fields and bring them back. And then I graduated. I was close to Nolan Park, so I would go up on the creek when the creek had water in it back then and wander through and bring back lizards and snakes and all kind of stuff. My mother eventually got used to it. I'd even go up there at night just to find out what the tadpoles had turned into when they found they were tree frogs. So I did that. I was going to be a herpetologist, which is a reptile and amphibian person. And I've had snakes up until a few years ago, but 12-foot pythons don't fit my living style now, so I gave those up. So I still like to go out along the trails here, and there's snakes and there's lizards out there, but I leave them out there because that's where they belong, but have some pretty nice ones. And I'd save people who are scared to go buy the 4-foot snake and explain it's just a gopher snake. I think I found an invasive species of spider around my residence, so I wanted to figure out what it was. So I did bring that in for a while and found out it's very tiny, but they're powerful little things that you don't want to bite you. But anyway, I'm just interested in learning, so I still love learning, and I'm still keeping that on. Okay.
Mark, I'm gonna have to leave that one to you because I can't do the insects and the snakes and the no. I mean, I had an iguana once, but that's about it. So thank you all for sharing. I'll go ahead and read some in the chat. Monique said roller coasters. That's awesome. I actually still love roller coasters. I'm a big kid with my children, and I would ride every single one if you take me to a theme park. Nicole P, rollerblading. I used to deliver newspapers. Let's see. Terry Dunn is a cab applicant. Hello, Terry. Love skating at the roller ring every weekend. I used to just ride down San Francisco hills and just pray that I get to the bottom. So, Kimmy, let's see. Dance hula, excuse me. I want to learn that as well. That's awesome. So we could take note. We'd have a skating day and a dancing day for all of the cab members. Let's see, Christina, riding bikes and gymnastics. That is cool. Then Patrice, volleyball and basketball were your sports. So I thank you all for participating. That was really cool to share all of our activities as a youth, and it'd be nice if we could still do those things. So maybe we'll write some of these things down and try to, everything open back up and have a cab day. Dell, I see your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Not a question. Mark, when you were talking about snakes, my father-in-law used to walk in the trails outside of Carmel up in the park. And one day he was walking with my wife, and he always carried a walking stick. And across the trail ahead of him was a snake, and he reached out and touched it with his walking stick and said, "You'd better get off the trail or you might get hurt." So it was a poisonous snake. So it went off.
Oh yeah, I can't do reptiles. So I appreciate you all again for participating. That was fun. Got to learn a lot about everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jonte that will go over the AB 109 history and intent.
Well, thank you so much for that, Nicole. So we got reptiles, rollerblading, roller coasting, and dancing. We have a group here. So just to dive in a bit about AB 109 history and intent, I just want to first take us back to mass incarceration. Mass incarceration refers to the reality that the United States criminalizes and incarcerates more of its own people than any other country in the history of the world, and inflicts that enormous harm primarily on the most vulnerable among us, which is poor people of color. In 2018, more than 10.7 million people entered US jails and prisons, the equivalent of locking up every single person on any given day and across the world does not add up to the nearly 2 million people that are behind bars in the United States, including the 4.5 million individuals on probation and parole under the supervision of the state. I want to include that the majority of the people we criminalize and incarcerate are Black and Latino. Even though these two groups constitute less than 1/3 of the national population, the harm does not stop at individuals. It affects whole communities, cities, and scourged through our community, including families. Next slide, please. While the incarceration rates in the United States remain relatively stable in the United States until the mid-1970s, the idea of being tough on crime language began to circulate amongst politicians across the nation. Despite the crime rates falling drastically in the early 1990s, this trend has continued into the 21st century, and incarceration rates in America remain at historic highs, with continued growth for nearly 4 decades. According to one research project that I looked up, the combined prison jail population of about 330,000 was in 1972. And now here today in 2022 is over 2.2 million. It brings us to today with AB 109 being signed into effect in 2011 by Governor Brown. It's referred to as the Realignment, which have made fundamental changes to California correctional system to stop the costly, ineffective, and unsafe revolving door of lower level offenders and parole violators here in our state. This leads us to the Contra Costa Reentry Strategic Plan, which provides a roadmap for reducing recidivism by addressing the root causes of criminogenic needs and behaviors. CAB comes in by overseeing and ensuring that our partners accomplish early intervention and program that addresses individuals' needs, including education, substance use treatment, mental health treatment, employment, and housing. The mission, guiding principles and goals included in the strategic plan that capture the goals of engaging and supporting individuals, families, and communities in the pursuit of a successful reintegration into the community and overall reducing recidivism. The CCP Executive Committee has the unprecedented opportunity to invest in proven evidence-based models and best practice in reentry. A holistic, systematic, and inclusive approach remains needed that involves government stakeholders, community organizations, advocates, formerly incarcerated individuals, family members. Collaboration, coordination, information, and communication are critical from CAB members for the success for AB 109 recipients. Right now, I want to go to a handout that we have. It's page 45 and 46. We will spend about 4 to 5 minutes going over this handout.
And just to give a little more clarity on that, this is the legislative intent of the actual AB 109 bill, and should be on page 45 and 46 in your agenda packet.
Thank you for that, Patrice.
And if it helps for folks, we can actually pull up the attachment here. Let me know if so, I can stop share screen and have Nicole pull it up, whatever works for the group.
Maybe it'd be helpful if you put it on the screen, then others could see it.
The agenda packet that I have has a different thing on page 45, 46. So I might be lost, but yes, I think it would be happy to project it as well.
Can you enlarge this a little bit, please? Wonderful, thank you. I think this item 3 is one that a lot of people, I think, in society think that that incarceration for technical violation or any violations provides better public safety.
Am I okay to go to the next page? You guys need more time.
We'll give it about 2 more minutes. And then we'll dive into things that stand out, get some feedback from the board. Okay, at this time, I would like to open the floor for discussion and ask board members' participation to just reflect thoughts objectively about what stands out.
This is Lila, and I can jump in real quick. You know, I think that the age of the document is starting to show for me in number 6, where it talks about community-based punishment and, you know, repeats that term punishment later on in the document. That stood out to me. I think, you know, in reentry services, we would, you know, look to use other language now if this document were updated. What I also noticed, I thought for some reason that this document would have like different types of offenses that might qualify for AB 109, but nope, the focus was elsewhere. Those were the 2 things that I noticed.
Thank you for that, Lila. I definitely think objectively, number 2 stood out the most for me, because it directly and ties into, despite what funding is being directed into the community, incarceration rates have worsened. For me, that stands out because I want to particularly understand what's going on. Is services being rendered correctly? Is individuals actually benefiting from what programs are open? Is the interventions being implemented in, a cultural sensitive aspect to assist individuals that suffer from these mental health and substance use disorders, as well as the trauma that has just been compounded from being incarcerated. So that one definitely stuck out to me. And number 7 on the second page, if you can scroll down a little bit, Nicole. This one also stuck out to me a lot because a lot of the information when I was on policy and budget was not hidden, but just not there. So key components towards understanding exactly, the data-driven research that shows exactly what works and what don't works. I mean, we're not perfect, but our overall goal is obviously, to invest, as we say in our pillars, in what works to improve individuals' family reunification, to understand their needs, to gravitate towards why individuals' cultural aspects, promote their ability to disengage from mental health, disengage from, live-in residential treatment programs, to not really clearly state exactly what they need beyond a house and a job. So those ones objectively definitely stuck out for me. I can't see everyone's. Let me see. We have any more feedback as far as the objective matter of what stands out?
Well, for me, for so many years, people saw incarceration as being purely punishment. And there wasn't much emphasis many, many years ago on trying to help restore people. And so one of the things that I like about this is that the acknowledgement and recognition, even though, as Lila says, there may be a need for some adjustments, overall, it's at least putting people in a hopeful frame of mind.
Yes, Dale, I definitely 100% agree. Reading this handout, is there anyone else objectively that would like to provide any feedback? Okay, in a reflective manner, what surprises you? What stands out when you read this? What question does it raise as either a new CAB member coming on or a CAB member that have been with us for a few years as far as our direction that we're headed? Well, in a reflective sense, I would definitely say my first question would be, how do we get our claws into what exactly will benefit this specific population? I would want to definitely say the question that's raised the most is what programs and services or what oversight from policy and budget advocacy or interventions will be needed to, improve our CBO's ability to really, provide adequate, treatment for the AB 109 population. As far as things that surprise me, it's like what Lila said, as far as dating back to the verbiage and things that have changed. Just really constructing and getting things that are, updated so we can ensure that stigmas as far as what we're reading and how we perceive it and how we're broadcasting it back to the CBOs as well as the participants are in, a new fashion order of, the latest verbiage.
Hey, John Tate,
I think
Go
that's
ahead,
Terrence. Go
Dr.
ahead.
Karen.
thanks, no problem. I'm sorry, I jumped in a bit late. My apologies. But John Tate, I may have missed, but definitely, going over these points are very, I think, integral moving forward to see, like you say, what's in the past and what's changing today, right? So as we begin to define what they are, things are still changing day to day, right? So when we begin to, hash out these things, we have to bring value to the individuals that's being served and having a seat at the table and having a voice in constructing a lot of these, points of views, because we still have to narrow the scope in reference to their needs, right? So as we begin to spell these things out and define them, they really have to be defined with the people that's getting the services. And also, how are these services being played into creating the policy behind it? Like we was in the policy committee, looking at a lot of things and how the money was dispensed. A large part of, how they define that and how the data was addressed in regards to that. As we begin to, align these things up, moving forward, we have to really take a close look at, the past, present, and what's already been spoken on and what hadn't. Because remember, in some of the interviews with some of the council members or county members, they were just stating, what's new. A lot of the stuff is new. So we have to begin to really look at that moving forward and how we're changing that and being agents of change as we define what these different individual items are, on this list that we're looking at. Thanks.
No, I definitely agree, Terrence, and thank you so much for broadcasting that to us. As far as any reflective thoughts on this handout, we have anyone else?
This is, I see Patrice's hand up. I'll just jump in because this is the second time I've tried to jump in, so I don't just take up more time if I do it a third time. So I was just, my attention was drawn to the second page and this, full list of different, sanctions, how it's listed. I think it's also described as, punishment or, different ways of, basically it's intermediate sanctions is what it's, or community-based punishment. But it's a whole list of all these different options that, I think most of them happen at the court level. And, I will say as a CAB member, I feel fairly disconnected, from what is happening or, data or, how often are all of these different things being utilized. And so that's where my attention is drawn is, just a curiosity with all of these different, intermediate sanctions and what that looks like in our county now.
Right. Totally agree. Thank you so much for that. I believe Patrice's hand was up.
Yeah, if no other members have any other reflections, I like to start as also a member of the public. I I also understand the same sentiments that Lila has. So what was interesting to me was the fact that there was a lot of contradictions, right, within this legislation. And though its intent, right, was to really to move in a direction of decarceration, or at least stop the flow. Really, that's what it was. It was trying to stop the flow into our state prison system, and then therefore make resources be available at the local level where people reside, right? But when you say punishment and then you also want to reinvest in or invest in restorative justice programs, right? Those things are somewhat antithetical. They contradict each other. And also to the point of, expansion of community supervision and other sorts of correctional type of practices, but yet justice reinvestment, which is the concept that's, I think, expressed a little bit further down on the on this document here, where you're looking to move savings from the carceral system to other community-based resources, or just other social services, health services that would address those underlying issues that are faced by those who are impacted by the justice system. So that's what's really surprising to me, that sometimes we have great intentions, right? We have good intentions and they don't always translate that way, or they're kind of jumbled up. But mind you, this was language that was developed back in 2010 and 2011. And so we're now at 10 years or 11 years of public realignment. And so to some of you guys' point that here we are, we're so much different now from that particular point in time, not only just in terms of reforms to the local justice system, but even just the nature context of the county itself, and the experiences that we've all endured over the years through changes in national politics, local, state. Everything has swung in a totally different direction since that time. So I just try to think about, because I've seen the same document for a few times now, and connecting it to, or at least taking a bird's eye view of, wow, where have we been? And that again, you can have legislators have great intentions, but being able to translate that to where it's implemented on the ground to create those best conditions that are necessary for folks to thrive and be restored into the community doesn't always exactly translate in that way, which is why I'm always a big proponent of local community being engaged in how to ensure that these types of policies are implemented to the best of the benefit of the residents.
I'd like to comment maybe, oh, excuse me, Terrence.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. No, it's interesting, just trying to sit back here and listen to everybody. And it seems to me that the portion that's on the screen right now is more of a direction we need to be heading, where they're talking about intermediate sanctions. And if you look at some of these things, the whole point is to keep individuals out of the penal system. And maybe if we looked at more of these items, mandatory community service, well, by George, why not lean towards mandatory community service versus incarceration? Or, even the one above that, item C, home detention. But really, shouldn't we be taking a hard look at the severity of the so-called crime? And does the punishment meet it? Just listening to the news the other night, a lady in Tennessee was attempting to legitimately vote, register. She had been previously incarcerated, and she even had the approval of her parole board. But the judge gave her 6 years in prison. And then you take a look at people that were convicted of being false electors or other things. They're on probation, and one guy, I think, spent 3 days in jail. And maybe we really, not maybe, but we should take a look at how do you deal with the various offenses, and then what's a proper remedy? And I guess, and you know, I don't want to be accused of being soft on crime. That's not it, but let's be reasonable. And hopefully, as we go forward this year, we can say, let's provide reason in addition to whatever else we've got to put out on the table. So those are just my comments.
Thank you so much for that, Crawford. And, you know, do we have any more hands up? No, I don't see none. All right. And just to sort of wrap up this portion of the history intent, just focusing more now on the intent of the AB 109 structure and how to really allocate these dollars into the community where it's mostly needed, and keeping our focus on individuals' needs, not just grouping, okay, this is what maybe can benefit all, but really getting down to the nitty gritty and following what's new, what research has shown us has been effective towards family reunification and individuals with mental health, and keeping what relationships we have as far as when we go out as ambassador and meets with our district supervisors, and ensuring that those doors remain open for extra opportunities for our CBOs that provide the services to our beneficiaries. Because that's overall my outlook of what justice reinvestment looked like. It's a family circle in whole, but catering to each individual need specifically. So at this time, do we have any additional thoughts on AB 109 history and intent? Okay, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Patrice, who will give us the local landscape and structure.
Oh, Jonte, it looks like Dale had his hand up.
Oh, apologies, Dale. Go ahead.
No problem. I like the intent of 109, and I like that we should focus, but have most of our focus on figuring out how to, if people who are incarcerated can be reintegrated into society, and obviously services is really key for them. I was in the criminal justice system as a probation administrator in the 1960s and 70s. And I personally worked on some death cases where children, especially in two instances, children were killed by their parents or related adults. There is some behavior that needs, I don't know how to describe this, but that needs some removal from society for at least a period of time, to then see if we can possibly prevent a reoccurrence of that kind of behavior. I'm in favor of punishment to a degree, but I'm also in favor of taking a look at the types of offenses that we traditionally have punished and inappropriately, I think. And so I think that society is moving definitely away from incarcerating certain offenses, which I'm in favor of, but we need to make sure that then we have appropriate services in the community to help them.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dale. Okay, so at this time, I don't see any more hands up. I'm going to turn it over to Patrice.
Okay, I think, Tiffany, was there something you wanted to share with the group?
No, I had mistakenly hit an emoji, so I was just doing excuse me with on my laptop.
Okay. All right, no worries. Okay, so I'll pull up the screen again, and I do want to mention that we didn't get to the Justice Reinvestment document, but that is in your packet as well if you want to take a look at it, and what that particular approach means and how it's being adopted by states all over the country, because mass incarceration, though here in the state of California, was quite enormous and led to a Supreme Court decision to reduce prison populations. In other states as well, they're experiencing the same effects. And so therefore, looking at ways to correct the system through an approach such as justice reinvestment has been something that's been adopted in several different places. So check out that document to read over it, to understand it as a concept and how that's applied. So, but what I'm going to talk about is our local landscape and structures. And I'll share with you why this information is really important to you guys as CAB members. So first of all, when you think about our county government structure, if you're not very familiar with all the departments and all of the services that the county provides, maybe the best way to understand it is comparing it to like a local city, if you will. So within our county structure, we have our board of supervisors, which are five person on board, all of which are elected, and they represent various districts across the county. And then beneath them, they're the equivalent of like a mayor or city council, right? And so they have to address any and all things related to county government services, also calls from the community of what they would like to see the county taken a position on or to address. And so beneath them or adjacent or in support of the board of supervisors and their role is the county administrator's office. They would be the equivalent of a city manager. And so they handle all of the administrative or issues as it relates to how the various county departments are functioning and operating. With that then are the various county departments themselves. And so what you see here in this diagram are the listing of departments within certain buckets. So we have our public safety side, which is what through CAB's work is oftentimes most concerned with, and that's probation, our probation department, our district attorney, our office of public defender, the sheriff's office, and then there's also animal services. I want to point out that our district attorney and our sheriff, they are elected offices as well. So though this diagram is showing that they flow underneath the county administrator and this bucket of public safety, they are independently elected offices. And so they also coordinate with the county administrator's office with things as it relates to their budgets, okay? So there's also the health and human services sort of bucket, if you will, of services that are operated through the county. We have our county's the Contra Costa Health Services Department, which is the official name, is the largest department in the county. And so there are a number of different divisions within them. But however, the ones we want to highlight to you are the Public Health Division, the Behavioral Health Division, which is the area that really oversees mental health services and substance use disorder treatment and other resources in that vein. And then we have our homeless services, which is operated through our Health, Housing, and Homeless Division, which you all, for those of you who are not new to CAB, you've heard about H3 and some of the resources that they are providing to not only AB 109 population, but really anyone that's unhoused in the county. Then another bucket under Health and Human Services is our Employment and Human Services Department. So all things related to public benefits that are administered through the county falls under that category. Our Workforce Development Board also sits within the Employment and Human Services Department. And the Workforce Development Board, though a good chunk of their money is coming from federal and state resources, in terms of where they're structured in the county, they sit within that department. And then you also have your Children and Family Services. Now, with the general county or general government operations, if you will, this is essentially the infrastructure that makes sure that money is flowing into the county, flowing out of the county, is being accounted for, and all other things that are necessary and impact essentially every single resident in the county. So we have a county assessor, which is the office that essentially establishes the values of properties. You have, for the purposes of collecting property taxes, you have your treasurer tax collector who does just that. He collects your taxes. And you have your clerk and recorder and elections body. We consult with them quite a bit as it relates to all things having to do with the clerk of the board and advisory bodies and how they're to function. There's also the auditor, controller, who's responsible for all of the financial reporting that is happening throughout the county for all of its departments, public works, and then our county council. Your county assessor, treasurer, tax collector, and your auditor controller are all three independently elected offices as well. So again, though they fall under Board of Supervisors, a lot of their work consists of really supporting the operations of county government, and they consult with the Board of Supervisors. But ultimately, their budgets are structured through the county administrator and is approved by the Board of Supes. Then lastly, there are some special districts that exist out there. Some of them are specially funded through particular specific tax revenues. There's your fire district, your housing authority, and your sanitation districts. So this is just sort of an overview and really a quick snapshot of how county government is structured, how it operates. And I'm sure all of you have touched, if not in your professional life, if you're living in Contra Costa, you have definitely touched this, or they have touched you in one way or another, okay? Any questions here or comments? Okay, I'll keep going. So, oh, I see two hands were raised. Let me see. Who do we have? We have Dale and then Terrence.
Yeah, this is Dale. Patrice, the Health and Human Services, of all of these that are on there, is Health and Human Services maybe the newest of all of those?
No, it's not the newest. So, sorry, let me go back a couple slides. I'm going backward, forward. So Health and Human Services, this is essentially just a label right now to help explain sort of both the health services that are rendered through the county and then all of your typical social services, right? Health services itself, the actual department is the Contra Costa Health Services Department. And that's separate from the social services that are administered through your Employment and Human Services Department. Also, we shorten it to EHSD. So oftentimes you'll hear us say EHSD, right, does the CalWorks or administers the GA services or SSI, things like that. That happens through EHSD or Employment and Human Services.
So the all of the mandates and requirements that came out for COVID, those came out from the health services box?
Yeah, our health officer. So
Yeah.
each county has a health officer who essentially has the authority to establish some of those orders, which, the shelter in place order that we all were, I shouldn't say subjected to, but we all had to follow. Let's say it that way. We all had to follow it. Yeah, so that's through health services. Mm-hmm. Terrence, you had something, and I see Jill's hand up as well.
Yeah, Patrice. So I just wanted to just target in on the county health plans.
Mhm.
Where do they fall in as we begin to look at social determinants of health, how it applies to incarceration, individuals less fortunate in the community, in the county? Where do they fall up under your organizational chart?
That's a good question. I would say they still fall under this category of health and human services, though I'm not, I have to double check, or Jill can probably correct me on this. I do not believe it's housed within Contra Costa Health Services Department. It may actually be its own office, but yes, it is still sort of within that same scope of health and human services.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just answer that. Safety net services, it basically is what EHSD does. So the thing that's missing on this list also is senior services, which is a huge piece of our services that we're providing, especially as our communities are aging. And so that does apply as well. So that's all under Employment and Human Services. So they have all of those Medi-Cal, food stamps, all of those programs fall under EHSD, and health services works very closely. There's crossover there as they refer people to those programs as they touch those people who could benefit.
Great, thank you. That's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this here? So
Jill, I understand that Dr. Ori was appointed at the board meeting yesterday as the director. Is that correct?
No, Dr. Ori Zavelli is the health officer. Anna Roth still remains the health services director. But Dr. Ori Zavelli took over for Dr. Farnatana, who is retired, and he is the new health officer going forward for our county.
Oh, health officer. Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to move right on along here. So this here's a map of our county and how it's broken up across the various districts that our supervisors represent. So as you can see, Far East County is represented by Supervisor Burgess. Sort of Central County is Supervisor Mitchoff. Along the waterfront there that spreads between East, Central, and a little bit of West, it would be Supervisor Glover. And then down in sort of South Central will be Supervisor Anderson. And I guess we could start saying Far West, right? Far West is Supervisor Joya. So this is how the map is broken up here. So if you reside in any of these areas and you didn't know who your supervisor was, now you know. Okay. And just as you all are familiar with in your work with CAB, you know that a big chunk of your work gets done in your various subcommittees. Well, the case is the same for our supervisors. They have several different standing committees that really help to break up all of the concerns and the issues and the policies and all things related to how the county operates in these various committees. I want to draw your attention to the Public Protection Committee. We'll be speaking about that next. And you'll see that it is, the membership there is with Supervisor Candace Anderson and Supervisor Federal Glover. If you are interested in learning about any of these other standing committees, just as a interested community member, and you want to know which supervisor sits on any of these committees, I have the link provided below. Every year, they are essentially either reassigned, or even the chairman or chairwomanship of those committees get adjusted. So it's always good to, now that we're in 2022, they have all been reassigned, and the chairs may differ. I believe maybe all of them may have differed or changed compared to the year prior. So you could look up the latest on that on our county website. So now if you can just track with me here, we started off by looking at the big overall county government structure, right? And then we looked at our board of supervisors. Then now we will look at the various bodies, advisory bodies that help to advise the work that is happening in those standing committees. Because a lot of your work falls within this area of public safety, we'll focus primarily on the Public Protection Committee. So the Public Protection Committee has 3 different bodies that speak to the work that they are looking at and deliberate on issues that they want to bring back to the full board. These aren't the only vehicles, if you will, to bring forward any issues related to public safety, to public protection, but these are, for the most part, the biggest advisory bodies that really speak to some of the work that public protection looks at. So we have our Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council in our county. This is actually chaired by our Chief Probation Officer, Issa Eamon Kraus. And this council is an advisory body that really does a lot of work and planning around resources that are delivered in the county to support young people that are in our juvenile justice system and the community at large. And so they have several subcommittees that are established here. And I want to point out that the Department of Juvenile Justice Realignment is actually very similar or is engaging in a realignment process currently, very similar to what AB 109 did for the adult state prison system. This is being done in the juvenile justice system, okay? So there's a lot of work going on, discussions around data and how to engage the community, what resources should be offered in order to establish those services and programs to support, to prevent young people from entering into the juvenile justice system, and then for those who are returning or are connected to the system and so impacted by the system in some way, that they are then supported. There's then the Community Corrections Partnership, which we'll get into the weeds in just a few minutes. As you all know, the Community Advisory Board is a subcommittee of the CCP, as well as a Quality Assurance Committee. We'll talk a little bit later, probably in day 2, right? The specific work of your various subcommittees of the Community Advisory Board. The other really important body is the Racial Justice Oversight Body, which is a somewhat new or newer body to that's introduced in the county here. A lot of the work that's happening there is to look at reducing racial disparities across the justice system. And so it started off as a racial justice task force several years ago, in which the full board of supervisors approved a list of, or really a range of recommendations. It was about 18 recommendations. And one of those recommendations was the creation of this racial justice oversight body. This body now is charged with overseeing the implementation of those remaining recommendations. So there's a lot of work happening there. Many of you have participated in some of those previous, in some of the racial justice oversight body meetings. And we're sharing this with you so you can see the overlap really and a lot of work that you guys do with some of the other advisory bodies. But a good chunk of this is related to improving our local justice system. But just know that public safety is not just housed within justice system related operations. There's also emergency services. There's also, as I showed earlier, our special districts like your fire district, things of that nature. So public safety is actually much broader than that, but there's so much work happening at the local level around justice reform and system change that it shows up in this way, right? In all these various bodies. Jill, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to note that the one thing that's not on here yet, because it hasn't actually been formally created, that it's working on, but is being funded, is the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, which the goal is to collaborate amongst all the divisions and departments in the county to sort of all move in the same direction, because there's many different efforts happening in many different places, but they're not necessarily coordinated.
Right. And their work may have some implications, right, on our justice related or public safety related departments. Ideally, the goal is that they place a racial equity lens on all county services. So right now we're just focused on the public safety related work. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of their work may very well have impact on our justice system related efforts. Okay.
Would it be a box on this graph here, Jill?
It will be a actual office within the county. Unclear where that office will sit at this point in time.
So it will probably, though, instead of this this diagram, which is really focused on the advisory bodies that support the Public Protection Committee's work, that the last chart that I showed with the overall organizational structure, as Jill mentioned, depending on where it sits, it would probably fall into that kind of a structure there. Okay, so our Community Corrections Partnership, which CAB is a subcommittee of, was initially established in 2009 through, guess what? Not through AB 109, but through SB 678. With the passage of SB 678, this allowed for all county probation departments to start using evidence-based services and practices to reduce recidivism. So in a lot of ways, this was teeing up county probation departments for what was to come through AB 109. And AB 109 then established the executive committee of the CCP. And their job was to advise a county on implementation of a public safety realignment. So the implementation of realignment, as well as the dispersal of resources that came from the state through AB 109 to all of the counties. So every county has a CCP, okay? That's nothing new or unique just to our county, but that's everywhere. Our CCP is a 14-member body, 7 ex officio executive committee members, who, by the way, are the only ones that have the authority to actually vote and approve on the budget that would be recommended to the PPC and ultimately for the Board of Supervisors to approve. There are 3 ex officio CCP members, and for our county, we actually have a CBO representative. Currently, our CBO representative is Pat Mims from the Reentry Success Center. And then 4 other CCP members are appointed by the BOS. The 2 standing committees here, as I mentioned, the Quality Assurance Committee and the Community Advisory Board. We'll talk more about how CAB operates and some of the work that you all will be doing going forward. But the Quality Assurance Committee really serves as a place where discussions around how services are being delivered, if they're being effective, data and evaluation that can be considered. All of those things are discussed during those committee meetings. We've attached I won't go through the document right now, but we have attached to the agenda, attachment 4, pages 11 through 14 are the actual CCP bylaws. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about how CCP meetings are to function in our county, who is exactly the membership on CCP, all of that good stuff is in the bylaws there. Just trying to keep track of time. Okay, I gotta hurry up here. All right, and now CAB. CAB was established by CCP in 2012. And correct me if I'm wrong, whoever's here that remembers that far long ago. CAB was a community advisory body to CCP, was something that was relatively new for other counties. So not every county, what I'm really trying to say is not every county had a community advisory board. This was a call from community because resources were going to be delivered out in the community through CBOs, and folks felt it was really important to have that voice at the table advising CCP on some of their decisions. And so to quote CCP bylaws specifically, CAB is to advise CCP on the implementation of the realignment plan. So if you ever had a question as to what role does CAB play in all of this, you're really speaking to all things having to do with how AB 109 is implemented in the county. It is you guys are a 15-member body of people who live and work in Contra Costa, 12 voting members and 3 alternates. You have 3 standing committees, your programs and services, outreach and community engagement, and policy and budget. Every year, CCP actually expects that CAB will be presenting a set of policy recommendations as well as your proposed budget for community programs. And I like to say that's a pretty awesome thing, that for a board such as yours that is really community oriented and community focused, that you all have a voice, a stake in saying, this is how we like to see resources be funded and allocated in our community. So that's pretty awesome. If you're interested in looking at your operating guidelines, which you definitely should read, it's in your packet on attachment 5, pages 15 through 23. Okay, any questions so far? And again, we'll go into greater detail about the various subcommittees and your work in day 2. All right, if I'm not hearing anything else, what we can do, Jonte, if you don't mind, maybe we could take a quick break so folks can have an opportunity to use the restroom, take a drink of water, whatever it is that they need, and then we can get started back at
2:40.
About 2:40.
Yeah, couldn't said it better myself. Let's
Okay.
definitely take a 10-minute break. I'll see you all in 10 minutes.
Okay. All right, are folks ready to join us again? Okay, I'm seeing screens cut back on. Welcome back, welcome back.
All right, welcome back, everyone. At this time, we're definitely gonna turn it over to our Vice Chair, Mr. Crawford, and Patrice is gonna enlighten us on more information on AB 109 and the money.
Well, if I can, Jonte, can I really quickly just share like maybe 1 or 2 slides on ORJ and then we'll jump into the money? Is that okay?
For sure.
Okay, all right, cool. So, and forgive me all, I know we're sort of running a little bit behind on our slide, but we're gonna get all the information to you. So I just realized, I don't think I actually introduced myself, but I'm Patrice Giller. I'm the director of the Office of Reentry and Justice. And it was actually an office that was proposed by CAB back in 2016, really to be the holder and steward, if you will, of various justice-related initiatives that were happening at the time. And so the Board of Supervisors actually approved for the ORJ to be established as a two and a half year pilot that would be housed within the county's administrator's office. In July of 2020, it was moved over to the probation department where we now reside as a unit of probation. And I like to say that CAB's original proposal actually called for ORJ to be in the probation department. So it had a funny way of making its way right back to where the community wanted it. I'm just going to really quickly share. Well, one thing I do want to acknowledge is my staff that's on here. We have Monique Tate, Nicole Popchuk. I don't think Denise is able to make it, but Christina and Kimmy, who've all attended CAB meetings in the past. And so their names may not be new to you, but I certainly want to recognize them. This staff has grown quite a bit compared to where ORJ first started. And we look forward to continuing to do the great work on behalf of the county. And so one more thing I just want to share really quickly about some of our ongoing projects, as well as some new projects that's coming online. Our office is in charge of the procurement process for our AB 109 funded reentry services. So though we also provide staffing support to CAB, we are also and supporting you guys as you develop your budget proposal for the resources you want to see funding community-based services. We're then in charge of that procurement process. We've also been expanded to take on some juvenile justice work, and we'll in the future be supporting RFP process for TAY Focus, which is our transitional age youth focused support services. I also want to highlight this last bullet at the bottom because this was a discussion point for CAB last year. We recently got, we being the probation department, and it will be it will certainly sit in ORJ's wheelhouse. We recently got Measure X funding to implement a 3-year restorative justice project. And so we will be looking to conduct a needs assessment of and inventory of, restorative justice programming and services that are happening across the county, and where that may be lacking, how we can then procure some additional resources so a restorative justice effort countywide can take place. So this is in direct answer to some of you guys' a call and question, and we're really happy that we were selected to play a role in that, and we'll likely be inviting CAB members to participate in helping us shape this project going forward. So I wanted to be sure to share that with you guys. Now we'll jump right on into the AB 109 funding. And by the way, if there's any other questions you guys have about ORJ, about our work and our structure, I know I just kind of breezed through some of that. We can certainly make time to discuss that as well. So show me the money. What is up with the money? So we'll talk a little bit, both between myself and Crawford, we'll talk a little bit about how we ended up with community money, where it started, how much money is out there and has been distributed through our county, and where it generally goes, okay? So with AB 109 side, there's some key things to keep in mind. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with government spending, as well as spending allocations and budgeting. But the main key things to note is that there's revenues, so what is coming into the county, budgets, which are essentially what is being established as approved for funding to be used for certain purposes. And then there are your expenses, what is actually what these dollars will be used and spent on. And so with regards to our AB 109 resources, the revenues that are coming through are largely projected dollar amounts. So these are state funds that trickle down to the county levels, okay? And a portion of state sales tax and vehicle license fees are what creates the pot of funding for what we call public realignment. And so various legislative bodies, including the Board of Supervisors, approve annual budgets based on these projections. So these projections come from the state, typically through the Department of Finance, lets the counties know how much they are to expect in AB 109 resources. So our AB 109 revenue mostly fall into two buckets. There is your base funding, and then there are your growth funds. And so we'll talk a little bit about what those two mean in just a minute. So corrections revenue by year for Contra Costa, this is just a snapshot of the base funding that's allocated year to year by fiscal year, as well as the prior year's growth amount. So the growth allocation is determined based on the base funding from the prior year. So for example, if you see 13-14, that 1.168 million is actually what was determined in 2012 and 2013, but applied, if you understand, hopefully I explained that clearly, but was applied in 2013 and 2014. So these are just some of the allocations you'll see in 2020 and 2021, that there were no growth funds. And that had everything to do with the fact that sales tax, the revenues were down pretty significantly in 2019 and 2020, right? Because of what COVID. So that affected the growth funding allocations there. We did see an uptick though, swing back in for 21, 22. So we definitely saw a more significant increase for this current fiscal year. I want to give a little bit of an overview of what the local revenue fund of 2011, what this is and what it means. So again, if you can imagine, you're receiving some new money. I'm trying to make it as practical as possible. Let's say you're getting a new income source, right? And however, it's so large that your existing accounts or your existing funding accounts are not equipped to handle all of these resources. So on a governmental level, because these funds also have some stipulations to them as it relates to what they can in fact be spent on, means that a whole new accounting structure had to be established to support public realignment. And so that took place in fiscal year 2011, 2012. So all counties then created what was called the Local Revenue Fund 2011. These are essentially new accounts in which a lot of these resources are flowed into. It is comprised of 10 individual sub-accounts and special accounts. And they are separately budgeted as a funding source for programs that are administered by the district attorney, public defender, probation department, sheriff's office, and behavioral health and other social services departments. The reason why this is so significant, because you want to keep in mind with public realignment, it wasn't just necessarily of, oh, we're going to shift the responsibility of incarcerating or supervising these individuals that have been convicted of certain felonies down to the local level. That then also meant that structurally the local levels had to realign, if you will, themselves and function in a different way than what they had done previously before 2011. So that also then meant that the accounting of these resources had to be restructured as well. So for these sub accounts that I mentioned, these are new accounts within our governmental, financial accounting, if you will. I guess that's the best way to put it. You have your community corrections account, your trial court security account, district attorney and public defenders account, our juvenile justice special accounts, and the local innovation fund. There are limitations that were placed on various accounts to specify how revenue may be used. So in the case of this juvenile justice special account, this youth offender block grant, there were other state resources that were already historically funding some of these justice system actors. And again, they got swallowed in or swooped up into the restructuring of how the accounting of these resources would be done. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask along the way. So what were some of those stipulations? Well, here for the resources that are to be used for the purpose of public safety services, right? What does that actually mean? It means that resources could be used for employing and training public safety officials, including law enforcement personnel, attorneys assigned to criminal proceedings, and court security staff, managing local jails and providing housing, treatment, and services and supervision of juvenile and adult offenders, preventing child abuse, neglect, or exploitation, providing services to children and youth who are abused, neglected, or exploited, or who are at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and the families of those children, providing adoption services and providing adult protective services, providing mental health services to children and adults in order to reduce failure in school, harm to themselves and others, homelessness, and preventable incarceration or institutionalization, and then preventing, treating, and providing recovery services for substance abuse. So through these accounts, right, this local revenue fund 2011 and all those sub accounts, it is so much broader than what we were talking about a little earlier, right? But however, again, the realignment was a restructure, a reorganization of public safety in general and across the counties. So that this gives you an example of that. Now, more specifically for our community corrections account, which is essentially the funding account that funds our community programs, funding for changes made by AB 109, including costs to house state parolees. So that was a stipulation on this specific account. The trial court security was the stipulation on this specific account was to fund the sheriff from funding to sheriff from court for in-court protection. And then these are a listing of others, just for the sake of time, I won't read them verbatim, but these were the specific stipulations for each of these sub-accounts that I mentioned earlier. So now community corrections budget and expenses per year. This is our actual county's accounting of community corrections funding and actual expenditures that were happening year to year. So I shared earlier about the base funding and the growth funds. Those together, you would see what our annual budget that was prepared by CCP and approved by the Board of Supervisors, what this was every year from 2011 through 2019 to 2020. This is just a snapshot, so you can kind of see the growth of expenditures every year and also the gaps. So for example, you see in 2013, 2014, there was an annual budget approved for 23.1 million, but yet actual expenses were just over 17 million. But then over time, we started to see the gap narrow a little bit. You see here in 2016, 2017, what was budgeted out by CCP and approved by the Board of Supes was 23.6 million, right? Then and the actual expenses from that year ended up being 23.5. I want to say now in 2018, 2019, as well as fiscal year 2019 and 2020, this is the first time we're seeing the actual expenses were outpacing what we actually budgeted. So I share all of this with you because one of the big pieces of discussion for CAB has not only been about budget transparency, but it's also been about analysis of our expenditures and the flow of resources coming into our county and the best use of those dollars. So now, if we can stop screen, or I'll stop sharing my screen, and Nicole, if you could pull up attachment number 11. So I just showed you multiple years of expenses and your budgets, just to give you a snapshot of how things have happened over the course of several years. Now what we're going to review is the total budget requests to CCP from last year, this year to be applied for next fiscal year. And so for those who are new to this process, every year CCP prepares a budget for the following fiscal year. So it's all being deliberated in an existing fiscal year, but to be applied for the following. So as you see here, this is the total budget request from all of the funded agencies. That includes county departments, as well as CBOs, which that proposal comes from the community advisory body. So if you can, Nicole, wait, scroll back up to the top. So we'll try to go through this quickly here, but if you have the document right in front of you, I want you to notice all of the agencies that are identified here. And these are just a quick snapshot of some of their line items for their budget. And this yellowish, orange-ish row is the 21-22 ongoing expenses, right? Where they match up. These are actual expenses. The following year, the next several columns, your 22-23 budget requests, are the requests from each of the funded agencies to CCP to say, hey, this is our baseline allocation, or these are our baseline expenses that we'll need to cover. And in some cases, they come and ask CCP, hey, we like to have some additional dollars for other purposes, let's say to expand our mental health services, or to hire additional sheriff deputies, or to hire more staff that's dedicated to serving the reentry population. That's your this middle row, middle column, program modification. That then is the request to show, right, we need more money from the baseline. And then the last column is your total amount requested. So this was presented to CCP during their December meeting. And we could take a minute to allow for you all to review this and also share any thoughts or feedback you might have. Dale, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Patrice, if the total requests by all of these is greater than the amount of money that's available, then what is the decision process of determining who's going to get what?
Yeah, so often that is a conversation that CCP has. Usually the CAO's office shares with the partnership that, you know, the projected amounts for the next year, and that it is really important to then stick with or just stay within the confines of those projected amounts. However, agencies still have the right to propose what they feel is best. So in this, many of you attended this, the last CCP meeting where that exact conversation happened, and CAO's office requested that only the baseline amounts to include COLA increases. So oftentimes the requests that come forward from agencies often take into account increases for salaries and benefits. And so CAO saw that as a baseline expense and was willing to approve that, but did not necessarily want to see or would share that it is imperative that we not add on any more new programs and services, because there's just no way of really knowing if it would be funded for the next fiscal year. But the partnership has the wherewithal to have those deliberations and ultimately make a call or recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to also talk through as well. Jill, I see your hand up. If you're talking, you're still on mute.
Sorry, I lost my connection. Are you talking to me, Patrice?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my connection went weak. One thing that I think should be pointed out, there was a significant unspent balance that went on for quite some time. And so, you know, good question on like what happens if somebody wants to over budget. The CAO's office, before this even comes to CAB or CCP, works with each department to make sure that whatever is asked is available. So no budget would ever come before you all that didn't have funds to support it. The only question is how quickly to spend down those extra funds, and whether or not to develop programs that maybe could not be sustained over time, given that the unspent funds are dwindling. But they're significant.
Yes, great point. Crawford, I see your hand.
Yes, Patrice. You know, maybe we could go through these. I hope I don't take up too much of your time, but if we could draw your attention to pages 37 and 38. And if you'll take a look there on page 37, you'll notice that the sheriff's budget, where salaries and benefits were increased significantly. And not commenting on that, but just notice that. Now move down a few and you'll see behavioral health services increase significantly. That's excellent. And now can we go to the other page here, the next page, you'll see CCC Police Chiefs Association. The funding was reduced, yet these funds are for MET teams. So I would, you know, challenge our board going forward. Let's take a hard look at that just to see what we can do moving forward.
Well,
Pardon?
Can I make a clarification on that one? So
Yeah.
the issue with the MET, so there was funding allocated to the years ago funding was made available to the Police Chiefs Association, which essentially funded additional officers, or known as AB 109 officers. I want to say that was either in 2019 or 20. I may have the years confused, so forgive me, that dollar amount was zeroed out. And what remained were the funding for the Met officers. Now, that has been sustained over time. So that's what you're seeing here, is the funding for the Met officers staying in place. The administration of the entire Met team, if you will, to service the various regions is now being supported by, well, it has always been supported by behavioral health, but they didn't have the administrative resources or wherewithal to do it. It was actually ORJ taking it on because we were housed in the county administrator's office initially. Anyway, make a long story short, that's where some of the fixes you're starting to see happen with regards to the Met team specifically. And so that will take into effect next fiscal year.
Well, excellent then. And again, my point is, as a board, as we are moving forward, we should focus and hone in on that. And finally, on this page, just maybe to point out the Superior Court. And I want to choose my words carefully here. I believe we've had a difficult time communicating with that branch in the past. Maybe we should make this a priority going forward in light of the funding that they are receiving, so that there's more communication and more openness with that particular branch. And I guess really the thing is, in our oversight role here, we should continue to scrutinize these items. I think just as you've mentioned, Patrice, and I believe Jill will mention also, we've got to scrutinize. And what was the old saying? Just follow the money. Because if you follow the money, that's going to let you know where the emphasis will be placed. So, and then I wanted to make, can I move to the page 40, or am I getting ahead of you? Okay, on page, or excuse me, let me do page 39 first. I'm sorry, this page. On page 39, you know, we did hear from the CBOs, and the CBOs got their 3%, their COLA.
So Crawford, can you introduce to everyone what this document represents? So folks,
which one are you on? Right here?
but there, yeah, the one you're speaking about.
Okay, this document here, this is basically the distribution of funds to the various CBOs, and you'll see Rubicon, sheltering, men and women of purpose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then this is the funding plus their COLA, and then you'll see the net result of their funding. And I think looking at this particular page again, they got their 3%. And I wanted to share with the group that when we were meeting as a board, I had asked for us to consider a mental health component here. And I had wanted a % of their funding to be allocated for mental health. Now, that wasn't approved, and I accept that. But I sure as heck would like to have this new board take a look at that. And maybe we can find some metrics for those who are not currently doing something in mental health. Just for example, you see Rubicon. Well, Rubicon's getting what, $2.3 million. Maybe if we do this the right way and talk to them the right way, if they are not providing a mental health component, maybe there is something they could do, maybe not this year, but maybe in following years. And again, the thrust being, we've got to do something for mental health. And I think it was Mark who mentioned, if we don't get the people who are returning in a condition of good mental health, we're wasting our time with all these other programs. What did he say? If your head's not right, nothing else is going to be right. So I just wanted to make that little pitch to the group and kind of move on here a little bit. Let's really take a look at that as we're moving forward as a board in the coming year. And that was all I wanted to comment on, Patrice. Thank you.
Okay, great. So just really quickly, and I think I'll be passing it off to Nicole in just a minute. But if you haven't already, look at both this document in your packet as well as the previous one. I will say that this, yeah, what page is this one again? 37 through 38. And then if you can go back to page one more, yes, and then this. So, okay, these two documents, what they represent. The first one, right, that long list of columns and expenses is the total request that was made from all the various agencies, including CAB, to the CCP for what they like to see spent for the next fiscal year. This document here is specifically the budget proposal that CAB put together for the different service areas that have been historically funded through the community. And that's for employment, for housing, peer mentoring, family reunification, legal services, and our one-stops, which are essentially our reentry service hubs that serve East and Central, as well as West County. Now, you'll see that there are 3 columns here because CAB's request for next year was that you wanted to see a COLA be applied, a 3% COLA increase be applied every year for the next 3 years, because typically our CBO partners are contracted on a 3-year contract cycle. Okay, so you wanted to be sure that they are receiving increases that every year for their 3-year contract that they can apply to their program. So that's what this document is here. And then there's also a narrative that explains this. So I think with that, we can now, if you could stop screen, Nicole, we can.
I think we have one question. Joe, did you have your hand
Oh.
raised? I saw it for a second there. Or maybe she just forgot to put it down.
Okay.
I forgot to put it down either.
It was up for like 10 minutes. I just wanted to make sure.
So now I will pass it back over to Nicole Green for any reflections and questions that she'd like to lead us through.
Awesome, thank you. So great discussion. I think we kind of tackled both at the same time that you were presenting, Patrice. So I've heard a lot of reflection and questions and feedback. And that was a lot of great information. So for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and go over some reflection questions and try to address, after hearing all of that information, I know definitely for me, I would definitely say this is my 2nd year in CAB, and I honestly felt like I've learned a whole lot this was retreat than I did. So I have a lot of notes here, but after hearing all that awesome information, what, 1 or 2 things stood out to any of you? Definitely for me was Patrice breaking down the money part of it. Of course, it always gets my attention on how things are allocated and moved around, learning a lot about the local revenue and things that I didn't know going into this. But would love to hear from you all to kind of figure out what things may have stood out to any of you on the CAB.
Nicole, this is Crawford.
I can't see the
chime in.
hands, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, go ahead. No, it's
Okay.
okay. I couldn't see all the faces.
I'll chime in again to, reiterate about follow the money. And if we really, with a laser, it's almost as if we've got to step back and maybe ask some of the individuals that we are interviewing that are joining us that have some experiences that we don't have. And if we can get with those individuals, then the issue becomes, what would have been important to you or to your family? And there was an old expression, you've got one mouth and two ears. So I guess what you better be able to do is use your two ears. So I think we need to listen more and more for input from individuals who have been impacted by our system. And that's my comment.
I definitely agree with that. Crawford, I think it's very essential that we listen to those that have been impacted and or that experience, because they know, right? Although we walk into this with experience from either our field or just being involved in work with this population, I think it's very important to hear from families. Also piggybacking off of what you said before in reference to mental health, I meant to bring that up. I definitely agree with you on that. Just in my whole field of work, I think it's important that we address the person as a whole. I would also really like to see some things going to mental health. You can't solve the problems here without addressing everything that an individual is facing. So I definitely agree with your point. Great point. I think Lila was, I know Lila, I think you were going to ask a question, but I see Dale hand up as well. So I wasn't sure who was first.
Oh, go ahead, Lila.
So this, wouldn't be obvious to everyone looking at all of these documents, but something that stands out to me is the Stand Together Contra Costa program, which is, about $1 million with the DA that, the monies serve folks primarily with immigration issues. There's been, while during the time that I've been on the CAB, there's been a number of presentations from that program, and it sounds like an absolutely beautiful and amazing program that doesn't have a lot of overlap, with what the CAB or really, AB 109 funding is set up for. And so, I've seen this kind of year after year response that there's nowhere else for the money to come from for that program. And it just, highlights a dilemma for me, I think, of what do you do when there are really, there are programs that need to continue to be funded, but they're where the money's at as opposed to where they should be. And it just makes me wonder, where is the space and place, to hold more funding for, services for immigrants. So not something that we're going to solve, something that's been carried over the last few years, and something that stood out to me, from some of the, documents that were shared.
Thank you. Dale?
Yeah, being really new to this, I feel so overwhelmed. But I've been trying to attend as many meetings as possible. And it's clear to me that the more meetings that we can attend, the better able we will be to make decisions here on CAB. For instance, attending CCP, attending the Measure X meeting, and attending some of these other even work groups that are not a part of us here, but maybe a part of the Area Agency on Aging. Like I'm on the housing work group on the County Agency on Aging, and yet housing is one of the areas that we fund here. So it's just a recommendation that I have to, as much as possible, everyone attend as many meetings as you possibly can. It can be overwhelming. And Nicole Green, I appreciated your comment about how wading through all of this has been a challenge. Boy, definitely. Sometimes I feel like I'm caught in a spider web.
I agree, Devil. We'll get through it, right? And I definitely agree with you on that, trying to participate in majority of the calls, which is one of my goals this year, being part of the CAP. So I think it is extremely important. Mark, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was looking at the thing on here after hearing all this, what intrigues you? Well, I mean, it's encouraging to see that the budgets have gone up. That means there's support. But I wonder how much general people in the community know what's going on and what they think of it. Whether, I mean, people can join in on this, but most people are just, doing their work and going home, taking care of their families. So, I mean, it's encouraging, but I wonder, how do we, like on the ground, know how much support there is? I mean, I assume the elected officials have support because they're spending money on it and they're still staying in office. But how much, or how can we do direct contact with the general community? Or is that our role at all? Because I've been an educator, so I just wondered if education about what we're doing is part of community engagement. Or maybe that's something we can do.
You sound like a candidate for the Outreach and Community Engagement Committee.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
Awesome. Thank you.
okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Nicole. I don't know
okay.
if you're going by hands or if we can
Well,
just jump in.
Go ahead.
No, it's good. So I just want to kind of reiterate, what everybody has stated, that, once again, this is my going into the second year. Most of the information is getting familiar to me now than it was the first year. And in a large part of what Patricia shared, and individuals begin to identify all these different pieces, and begin to look at them with a fine-tooth comb and identify what's needed to happen in the next phase. Really, really good. Really, really good perspective. And also, as we begin to look at this in an equitable lens, even though we're dealing with social justice, how do we continue to do so with this equitable lens? Even though we're looking at these things and identifying these different intricacies that has a part and play a part in what we're doing, in the work we're doing, how do we continue to be equitable in our approach? Just something to think about and putting it on the table as we begin to discuss more and more throughout this year. Thanks, Nicole.
Oh, thank you. Great feedback, everyone, and responses to the questions. I believe I've seen another hand up, but I don't see it now. Does anybody else have any feedback on the questions here?
I think that's time for me to jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm new. Actually, this is makes 1 year, my 1 year anniversary. And, I heard someone say that we need to hear from those who've been impacted, by these different issues that we're currently overseeing. And as far as myself, some of the things that I would like to see, and I'm learning because it's a process. First of all, you have to develop, the articulation and understanding what CBOs are, and, meeting the different CBOs that come and make presentations about what they're doing. And there's a lot of information that I've gleaned from these various agencies and what they're doing. And the thing that for my own personal self, and this is from my experience, the things that I really needed was reunification with my children, because that was the most severe thing I think that could ever happen to a mother, to be separated and going into custody. And the other thing that I've become an advocate for, and that's restorative justice. And when I returned to academia, I felt that I'd been thrown under the bus when I was going to community college because I had been incarcerated, because I wasn't familiar with the verbiage and what reentry was. So by that being served to me, I thought it was a hindrance. But when I started doing my research about what reentry really meant and what I could do being an advocate and being in that position, is when that light got lit. And when I was in a community college, I decided I wanted to be that example that you can change and you can do things that you thought you never could do with adequate support, with becoming self-sufficient, and all the things that I've gone through since my incarceration, reinventing myself on numerous occasions because I've had to fit in, because I wasn't aware that there were certain things that were available because they weren't on my radar. But now that I know, and now that I can be an advocate, it's important for me to be a voice and to be a set of ears. And, in the Policy and Budget Committee has given me a lot of insight on how budgets and a variety of things go. And putting the pieces together, I just want to say it doesn't happen overnight because we all have lives. But as I heard Dr. Cole say, we build upon what we have, and we take it and we become a collective unit. And my input today would be that I would like to see more emphasis. I heard Donta say about the individual, that individual person, because everyone has specific needs. And, I know that it takes one person to change a lot of things, but we have to make more direct contact with individuals and really looking for those needs and personal goals and have mentors. It's just so much that we should be doing, and we can't be in all places at one time. But I would like to be a voice, and that's why I'm here as a CAB member, to be a part of the community and to be able to be some eyes and ears, and to be able to take what I've learned and gleaned and to help someone else, because that's all one person can do at one single time. But thank you for letting me share that.
Ozzy, I really, really appreciate that. That's exactly what we want to hear. Be a part of the CAB, right? The real stories and how they actually really help individuals and stories like that. So I really appreciate you for sharing that. We can clap together. This is my second year anniversary, but my first year, so year 2 for me too. So we started together. I'm checking now. I believe I've seen hands, but I know at the sake of time, I don't see any more. So I appreciate everyone's feedback. If there isn't any more feedback in reference to reflection on the questions, I believe the next thing is either a break, or are we going straight into the lessons learned due to timing?
So we can fill out the room here. We can
Okay.
certainly take a quick break if folks would like, and then resume to hear from some of our past CAB members who will share some lessons learned. But it is certainly up to the group. We're okay on time.
So how does everyone feel about a break, or do you want to keep going? You can put like a thumbs up for a reaction, or or just scream break, whichever works better.
Short break, 3-minute break.
Okay.
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 So if folks want to shorten it, then we can do, let's say we could reconvene at about 3:32.
Okay.
Okay.
That works. All right.
Right.
Sorry about that, everyone. It sounded like the police was knocking on my door. I had to put my deep voice on. Who is it? All right, so it's 3:32 and I see we're all back. As you know, we're unwinding and we come to a portion where we have past CAB members that is on with us right now, Mr. Michael Pitts, and I believe Shayla, I don't see her. So I want to turn it over right now to Mr. Michael Pitts so he can just shower us with some lessons learned from his years as CAB chair and as a CAB member. Hope you all appreciate him as much as we did when he was here. So, Mr. Pitts.
And well, I guess my first lesson learned is that I thought maybe I wouldn't have to do anything here. I know I said this in the last meeting. Sorry, but no, good to be here. And then, I've heard some people touch on it already. I think the biggest lesson that I've noticed, or some that we have to keep pulling ourselves back, is just kind of having the compass as a board, and then also kind of know what our direction is, and then what's under our purview. I feel like you really have a great group of people that really are serious about what they're doing and what they're in charge of. And sometimes I think we kind of overflow into other things and with our concern, and sometimes it's really not under the umbrella of CAB. But I think I've been fortunate enough that just with my time before I was actually a CAB member, my boss was on CAB, and we used to go so I've been pretty much involved with CAB for going on 4 years now, some as a public member or as a board member. And it's been really great to see the progression. And as I said, I want to always be optimistic. Maybe the world has changed permanently as far as how we're meeting and this virtual. There is a hope that we get to a point where all you folks are together. And I believe there are some kind of organic benefits from actually sitting in the same room. So I always want to preface it by saying I don't want to be that guy who's raging against the technology, but I do look forward, and I think there's going to be great benefits for folks once you can start meeting in person and really knowing all these folks that are your fellow board members, as well as folks with the public who from other agencies that are here for all our meetings, Jill, Ray, like that. So I don't know other than to say that I just, as I said, kind of going out, that I feel like the board, you guys are in great hands, and John Tay and was in Nicole and Crawford. I know you guys have snatched that baton, and you're ready to hit that finish line.
Michael, if you would, could you just speak to past year's accomplishments? Because I want to build morale amongst the group. And I mean, you explained it a lot better than I ever could. But just so we know that CAB does have a valuable position within the ladder. So if you could just speak to some of the past accomplishments. We have a few newcomers on the line, so I just want.
Oh man, see, hey, Jonte, he really put me on the spot here. But I thought that was already covered. But we got to look at. I know Patrice touched on it. It's that really kind of. I don't know if it's the waves crashing on the shore, but the whole thing about every year talking about incrementally making having ORJ stronger and more solidified and increase of staffing. I think that's been really great. From the jump, CAB has really been concerned about just the whole transparency and budgeting piece. I know that's kind of in our charter, but it's really something that's really been accomplished over the years as far as it's been great with the county and county agencies trying to have the whole budget piece and how their report to have it consistent so that we can read it. And I do know, and I think Jonte was there as well. I do know coming in, and with this whole budget piece and this, and we're passionate people. We're laymen. I'm not a CPA, so I don't know. Some folks are, but just really to have that deep dive, and also to just understand what's going on with budget. So a lot of that stuff, and it's been great. And I've said, maybe it's a nerd thing, like I was really excited about what CAB did, that our recommendations were really, they're codified by the county. And that hadn't always been the case in the last 4 years. It'd be like, we'd make our recommendations every year. It was like a really big deal, that one. And then also that our thoughtful recommendations were taken, and nothing bigger. This is when I really started nerding out, was when there was a recommendation for a cut, and then CAB recommended that the CBOs, I believe something with housing, a piece of housing, and I think there was another piece of another county agency, maybe HIP, was left whole. And I sat in a meeting where there was a budget discussion, and the county agency said, "Oh, okay, we'll absorb this." So that was a big deal. I might have been screaming and jumping by myself, but it was a big deal. So I expect it, and by the past, just with the folks that are on the board, I think the leadership that we have through the CCP and ORJ, that expectation is that that's going to continue. So we got to do our part. I'm still saying we got to do our part. That's a thoughtful and well thought out recommendation and asks. And I think the past few years has shown that if we do that, then those recommendations will be seriously considered and implemented. So no, I think, and yeah, I think those are like the big things. And the one implementation was just the fact that now with these budgets, if you have an overage or underage of a certain amount, you need to explain it, which we thought was great. And that was really for us as I was going to say watchdog Crawford. I'm gonna hold it my tongue. It said as illuminating. No, what is it? Spotlighting. That was something that we really need to be able to understand. If you're not spending your money or you're spending too much, kind of just let us know why, because there are some reasons. So I don't know if Jonte, if that handled it. I don't know if you wanted something more specific, but
no, I definitely think that touched the bases. Like I said, with building or raising the morale of the group that's here. We got some great ideas just to let individuals know that our recommendations were accepted and approved from CCP, so they really take serious what CAB is doing, and CAO really making sure that those overages, underages have to be explained. It just opened my eyes when I was on policy and budget. And that's why I was telling Michael last year that we want to make sure that this year, what we're putting forth, the direction we're headed, obviously we have it all placed together. So when we present it, it'll be accepted. And, we see which way we're going with individualizing treatment and making sure that the mental health component is obviously just, without a doubt, just placed at the front of the list, because before you can move into anything else with reintegration, you have to deal with healing, nurturing, family reunification, and things of that sort. So, you know, it goes just without saying that I wanted individuals to hear, you know, from you that for the past few years that I've been here, our recommendations have been accepted and taken seriously. So
And
I really appreciate that, Michael.
And if I could
so
throw
much.
one other thing in, and I really believe this, that there is actually optimism and it's a positive. And the fact that I know there's so many folks that are here right now that felt like, well, our work wasn't done. There's some other things we wanted to do. And truly, that's a benefit because you guys are the continuity of this board. And the fact is, you're gonna have an advantage that I don't think this board had the last 2 years. My first year we did, and prior, that you're gonna you're gonna end up at the end of March, kind of really knowing the direction you're gonna go in certain areas. So some of those things that were left on the stove, simmering, that's a good thing. It's a slow cook. It's a slow cook recipe, and hey, when you taste it, it's gonna be great. All right, so hey, you got, it's gonna be great.
Okay, we're at 3:44. Dale, I see your hand up. You're on mute, Dale.
Sorry, when Michael mentioned the word housing, the thought that immediately occurred to me was, without housing, we have homelessness.
Crawford.
I don't know where to start other than, hey, Michael, thank you. And oh, do you want to move to homework now? Is that where you're moving, Jonte? Okay, let's start with homework. As Michael used to say, my dog ate my homework. Well, let's not hear that tomorrow. So we'll start off with, and if you'll just take a look at the slide and follow with me, please. Our slide breaks out the subject matter. Note the policy and budget recommendations that we're referring to here on pages 24 and 25. This really represents CAB's marching orders with specifics. Again, marching orders with specifics subject to our review in the coming year. I like to refer to pages 26 through 29 as meat on the bone, as far as the overall CAB recommendations. So please read this thoroughly, as this could be our roadmap for moving forward in 2022. Now let's move briefly here to pages 30 to 32. These are our talking points as we develop our strategic approach to those agencies and individuals that we meet with as ambassadors for CAB. This is an excellent guide to prepare for and to conduct your interviews. Let me state now, it's a guide. You may have a better or another way to approach those interviews, but please take a look at that, and maybe we need to discuss that tomorrow. And finally, the ambassador program. The ambassador program here on pages 33 to 35, you know, I think we can make this easier and more efficient if we develop a mechanism for a quarterly CAB report that can be rolled into an annual executive summary. I believe our staff, and especially Jonte, would appreciate our consideration of this suggestion. So think about that as we move and setting the stage, setting our roadmap for 2022. And I was just thinking, as I know I was working with Kenya on our executive summary for outreach and community engagement. And my thought was, well, criminy, if we did this every quarter, this would be a piece of cake at the end of the year. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Think about that as you are reviewing these pages, as our homework. And I'm finished. And I think it's time for Jonte to wrap this up.
Jonte, can I jump in really quickly to just add a little bit more context to this too? So these items as well are to support you in grounding your knowledge on what CAB has been working on over the last year. So that's why this is really important. And to Michael's point, where some of this stuff spills over year to year, right? Because we know that change doesn't happen on our timeline. It happens when it happens. So that means you may have some accomplishments immediate, or change might happen immediate, and some are just incremental. So that's why you have we're asking you to review the 2021 and 2022 policy recommendations, so you can see the evolution of your recommendations over the last 2 years. And then your talking points in the executive summary of the CAB Ambassador program really highlighted the themes from all the various one-on-one conversations you all had with supervisors, with department heads, and the like. So that's really good to read through, refresh your memory, and be prepared to talk about your marching orders, right, for the next year or for this year. Also, please note that these page numbers are affiliated with today's agenda. Tomorrow is a separate agenda, so the page numbers will adjust, but you can still find, you can look for the titles that are listed that correlate with the various attachments on the actual agenda. So just note that agenda for day one, page number wise, is very different from day two, even though it's the same materials. And that's it.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Patrice. So we move on to reminders, but before we do, I just wanted to take the time to sort of just broadcast out that we do have 4 potential board members on this call. And I just wanted to open up the floor to see if, excuse me if I'm butchering your names, Lanitha, Scott, Terry, or Triana, sorry, have any reflections, because this is like basically your orientation of what's going on. So if you had anything, I definitely want to open up the floor to see if you have any reflections of the day.
So, hello, this is Lanita. I do actually have a reflection for the day. When I did my application to sign up for this committee, I had briefly went over the website and looked at some things and found why I was interested. And today, after the presentation, I am still definitely interested and also bring that lived experience. So thank you for the day.
Thank you.
My reflection is just that I've sat in on a couple of meetings before and felt welcomed immediately. And I can't describe what it is about this group, but when I sit here with y'all, I'm like, I could work with these people. And I'm inspired by the work that you're doing, and even more inspired by today, even before Michael spoke. So, but that was a good report. And so anyway, looking forward to the process continuing. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so as we move on to day 2, we just want to look at it. It'll be tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 12. Keep in mind, we'll definitely be choosing our subcommittees, which is huge. I know inside of the packet, it orientates us on exactly where that subcommittee direction may be headed. We heard a lot of information towards program and services. And it just really steers tomorrow, when we go into our subcommittees and go into our votes, the direction of those subcommittees. And we have our homework. And I think that's it. Patrice, is there anything else for tomorrow that I'm missing?
Make sure you have your coffee and whatever snacks you have ready to go, because it's going to be a whole lot of good information. But you will engage in a lot more discussion for sure tomorrow. And then Jonte, I see that Jill has her hand up as well.
Okay, sorry for that. Jill, go ahead.
No worries. I was waiting until you were done talking. And I just wanted to say I am super excited that you all have 4 applicants who are interested in joining the CAB. That is great news.
Thank you for that, Jill. Anyone else? Okay. And at this time, we can adjourn. See you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, Jonte.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao. Have a good evening.
So.